All right, thank you. Welcome everybody. Welcome to the Distance Learning with Common Sense Education. My name's Jennifer Ehehalt. I'm the Senior Regional Manager on the Education Outreach Team located and based out of the Chicago area. And with me today, we have an extremely special guest with us, Kareem Neal, who is the 2019 Teacher of the Year in the Arizona area, so welcome Kareem.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to sit back. Yeah, have a conversation, and we are thrilled to learn about this topic because you can never learn too much about transitioning from in person to online. So let's get started and just tell us a little bit more about yourself and your district.
Okay, so I teach at Maryville High School in the Phoenix Union High School District. It's a standard high school, 3,000 students. I teach self-contained, meaning my students are with me all day. If you're educators, you probably already know. So my students are with me all day. They have moderate and mild intellectual disabilities. There's also some physical components, physical needs that some of my students have. So I have 3 paraprofessionals in my classroom who are fantastic. And they are also a part of my kind of virtual learning planning. So we'll talk more about that. And so, yeah, so I'm in the heart of Phoenix, and it would be actually like West Phoenix, but yeah. And Phoenix Union High School District's a super large high school district there.
Wonderful, thank you. And so we're going to talk a little bit about, ways that you can be, stress-free as we think about some of the strategies that have worked for you when we have to transition to online learning. And so, we're all in the planning phases, so we would love to hear from you in terms of, how do you plan for distance learning? What's your process?
So when I started, it was kind of, I think all of us didn't necessarily know what to do because it was like March 13th happened. I was actually on spring break, supposed to come back to school on Monday, and it was like, we're not coming back to school. And now we had 2 weeks to plan. And so for me, I do a lot of equity work. I do a lot of speaking about the needs of students. So that came into my mind immediately. It was like, what will my students have in order to learn? How will I address my students that no matter what you do, because our district did a great job in getting computers to everyone. They set up areas for so that they can get the internet. So that was taken care of, but I have students who can't access a computer on their own. I have students who can't turn a computer on their own. And so I had to start thinking about kind of that equity. And I remember in my head saying, okay, I'm gonna plan times with all my parents, and I have a great communication tool I'll talk about in a second to kind of get everybody together. But I remember thinking to myself, how am I gonna do, an hour-long session with a certain group and an hour-long session with another group, when the one group, it's they're readers, they do well online, they can do touchscreen, they can do mouse, where I have other students who they will be sitting next to their parent, and maybe their parents will be pushing the buttons and talking to them. How will an hour look for each of those students? So really, there was a lot going on, but I really thought about the equity and access portion first. Then I thought about communication, and that's where my tool, I was fortunate that I used the tool, and it's called classdojo.com. So if you go there, if you're a high school teacher, you're gonna think it looks like a site for young people, but you can change out all the pictures and make them pictures of your students. And so then it definitely seems like an age appropriate site. It has social emotional lessons in there. But the greatest part about it is it automatically translates for the parents and for the teacher. So whatever your first language is, when you sign up for Dojo, classdojo.com, when you sign up for it, it automatically speaks in your, you actually write in your language, or if you do a video, it's in your language and automatically translates. It's really cool. But the thing about it was I had my parents on it, and it considers kind of all tech options. Like it can be used on the phone, and it comes to the parents as kind of a text message, or if you're using a computer, it's of course a full website. And so that was helpful for me to just get the parents together and say, okay, we need to come up with a plan together, and this is what we're gonna do. And we started I had my paraprofessionals go on, I had my students go on, I had me go on, and we made videos on there. And we started kind of talking about scheduling with the parents, because you can do group chat or you can do individual chat. So I did all of that, and it was really super helpful in getting everyone in the same place to say, okay, we're going to do our virtual learning on Microsoft Teams, but this is when, the how, this is what it's going to look like. So that communication tool was huge. Then kind of my third step was, okay, there's IEPs and services that need to be done. How do I do that? And I kind of looked at the minutes, and I looked at, okay, everyone has minutes. Can these minutes be met by me online? And if not, who do I talk to? So that was kind of my next process. And then of course it was like, okay, how am I going to instruct? What tools am I going to use? So that was like my process for those 2 weeks. All of that was happening. And so I actually think when I started, and the reason why I felt comfortable doing a chat like this, I actually had a great amount of success with, in terms of percentage of students who were online and how the learning went.
That is incredible. I mean, you captured it all in 4 easy steps already. This is amazing. I mean, really, yeah, just 4 things you need to consider. And if you get those down, yeah. And I really like that you brought up Class Dojo, because I've done a lot of these chats too. And Class Dojo is sometimes it's known to be more elementary, obviously, or, most popular amongst, elementary buildings in terms of parent communication. So love the idea of introducing it to a high school level, at a high school level. And I don't know that everyone realizes all the different features that you can switch out and utilize all on one tool, because parent communication is key when we're transferring over to the distance learning platform, especially giving them voice, parent voice in their child's learning, and they can be involved. I think that engages everyone in a positive way. So
it's amazing. And I used it anyway. We took a lot of pictures in our class when we were either out in the community or in class, student videos when we did projects, so that the parents could see like, hey, work is actually happening in here. You can check it out, So it was really good.
And most parents obviously love to see their kids in action and learning. And so, it's and it's on their access is easy for them, then it's easy to get.
And
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say, don't worry about the look of the website. Like, you can totally change it to look more age appropriate, because I think that
so cool and important, so that the kids feel like it's a mature tool and it's cool. Got to keep it cool, or they're not going to use it. So obviously it sounds like you had a really good connection with your parent community, and very successful. So once you got that connection with the families, and you were communicating, I noticed, I would love to hear a little bit more about how you incorporated your high-tech, your low-tech, or even no-tech, because that is something every educator's thinking about.
Exactly. So now we talked about this before. So I actually have this extensive 4-page sheet of high-tech, low-tech, no-tech options. But I'll talk about what I knew right off the bat in my mind. So HighTech, we have an amazing curriculum tool, and I bet you a lot of y'all know of it. It's called Unique Learning Systems, and it's n2y.com, I believe is their website. But that is a paid site, so that's not something that's free. Our district had purchased it as a curriculum tool, and what was interesting was a lot of teachers were kind of like, before virtual learning happened. But it really, really, really works with virtual learning. Like, you screen share, and it has curriculum laid out, and it has books, and I mean, it just has a ton of resources, and it does kind of grade appropriate type work too. So the stories for high school students are much different than the stories for elementary school students. They have bands for high school, middle school, elementary, and transition. So it's amazing, right? But that was my district's curriculum tool. And so I knew HighTech, I'm going to be diving into that. I'm going to be diving into BrainPop. We use BrainPop a lot, BrainPop a lot, because it's really relevant. Like, their first, the first BrainPop episode after when March happened was on coronavirus, right? So, those kinds of things are really, really great resources. So I knew, okay, HighTech people, we were going to do a lot of that kind of work, and it's going to be fantastic. Now, when I thought about kind of low-tech folks, I was thinking, okay, they probably have a cell phone, so that was good. We were able to talk on kind of using Class Dojo and things like that, but they are not going to be able to access a website initially if they're just using a cell phone. So what kinds of things can we do for that? And so what happened was like the unique learning system had these books, and it was like, okay, we can actually print those out or post them on a site where they can listen to them. But what we did was use printouts to send home to all the low-tech and no-tech folks all the books. And so Unique Learning has this large library of books that is to the level of the student. So you have students who maybe their levels are pictures, they're pointing to pictures, they're looking at pictures, all the way up into students who are reading at about the second grade level, high school student. And we were able to kind of send resources home that way. But one thing we did that was interesting, particularly with the parents that I was talking to on the phone, and also the parents in the classroom were talking on the phone to the parents, what we were saying was, okay, watch this episode of, some show. And when you watch this episode of the show, ask your kid about the characters, the setting. But for students who that wasn't their level, it was even colors on screen, objects on screen. And then for kind of the higher level thinkers, it was, watch a movie and talk about theme, characters, protagonists, and things like that. And then the speech therapist also coordinated with them and said, okay, these are some of the prompts for conversation starters, and sent home lists for the kinds of conversations they would like for them to have at home. I talked to parents about, okay, these are some of the activities we would do in a classroom, like cleaning. We have a laundry room in my thing. We have a kitchen for dishes. And when they do it in our class, we have like pictures of the words and things like that. So it's like, parents, we can send you printouts of our PECs that have words like broom and, dish or whatever, and you can just put them on those objects at home. So that was a really good option for those low-tech and no-tech folks. And for the no-tech folks, we were truly just send it home in a packet, and then the packet explained to the parent, this is how you can do the chore activities that I was talking about, the TV watching activities if you have a TV, or if you're or with these books that you have right here in this packet, these are some of the questions you can ask. And so it was kind of like that.
And so just to clarify, the packets and like what you just said, is that all part of the Unique Learning system, or do you have stuff outside of that platform in case?
I do have stuff outside of it. So I did do packets from Unique because of how well it's laid out for my, but I did use other sites like education.com. They have a free resource, or 3 free resources a week. I used some IXL math for some math stuff at home. So they said to us, look, we can't go out every day because we don't want that much exposure to the environment. So truly put together, a packet that will last for the 6 weeks for those students who cannot get online, for those parents who cannot get online. So we just sent a massive packet with those types of resources. But yes, for me, most of the resources came from Unique Learning because the books are catered to their level of reading. So it wasn't kind of parents might have to help that student. It's like, it's right on their level. So you just follow along.
That's incredible. I know, I'm a mother of a 3 and 5-year-old. And when you talk about words and cards and no cards, I mean, my whole house was transformed into walk the room, and they had to walk around and, write the word stove or whatever. And so, you're right. It comes down to sometimes just the like simplest things that are in your environment every day. Like once you do it once and just like let it up there for a while, you don't necessarily have to turn it over every day. Like it's.
Yep. And we talked a lot about sensory tools for the students. That's where their levels are. They need to be touching things. They need to be feeling things. They need things on them. So it's like, instead of, because in school we have some students who use like a hug vest. I don't know if anybody's ever seen or heard one of those. It's kind of a weighted vest. And it gives them that kind of input. And so it's like at home, you can do wraps with blankets. You can deep pressure on heads for some students. I have deep pressure on joints. And it was really kind of this we had to say, think of every single thing. Think of the student who they will not even be able to, touch a computer screen or even hear your lessons that we posted on YouTube and things like that. What kinds of things can they do? And it was just like, okay, they might need to be engaged with, their sensory needs. And so it was just like, parents, if you can fill up your sink and have them reach for items and, those types of things for students who needed those sensory needs. So we kind of covered those also.
So it sounds like even the sensory examples are really things that most have around their house. So
Exactly.
It was an easy, like low-hanging fruit to just, hey, let's play with water. Like you said, life skills, doing the laundry, cooking. I mean, even just like, cookie batter or
Exactly.
just pasta noodles. I mean, like there's so many things that are just naturally
yes, and we
sent home,
we sent home Play-Doh, and we sent home like vision boards that were with color lights and stuff like that for when they touch it, it lit up. So we sent home a few things. Of course, you can't send home, boxes and things like Amazon.
Right.
We did what we could with the paper stuff that we sent home and a couple sensory items, but then just said to them, these are all the things around the house that you can use for those.
Yeah, that as a parent, I feel like, thank you. It's not like this big list of, it feels easy, I guess. Wonderful. Yeah, that is all things I think too that help keep the normalcy with students, like, hey, we used to do this in the classroom, even though my teacher's online, I can do it here too. Like they can see that transfer. So I think too, the more routine we can keep is also another important piece to all of the learning where that happens. And so speaking of learning, we're all figuring out how to engage, differentiate, reach all kids through this a platform, whether it's Zoom or whatever the platform it is. So you talked a little bit about when we talked earlier, sometimes it's sitting down with a parent, sometimes it's the professional, like in the session with you, sometimes it's small groups. I would love to hear a little more about, I guess, bringing that alive. Like what does that look like?
So so the actual instruction, again, I think it went really well. The only issue I had was time, so I'll explain it. So for the students who kind of had low needs, so they were their own, their parents would essentially set up a session. So I did one-on-one sessions with my students. I had 15 students. I did a group session 2 days a week, and I did one-on-one sessions all day, every day. And so one of the things that I thought about, particularly I talked about some of those equity pieces where some students were not able to get on from 7 to 3, which is 7:30 to 3:30 is my school time. So there was actually some students that I would take in the evening also and just do one-on-one sessions with them. But I did one-on-one sessions, I did screen sharing, and I did unique learning because it really has a layout that works really well with it. I also did like a brain pop lesson a week. And News to You, which is a subset of unique learning, right? But I set it up so that I can do a decent amount of one-on-one sessions because most of my students learn best that way. I had the principal at my school send laptops to a paraprofessional so that supplemental learning would happen that way. So every morning, my paras and I would get online and I would say, okay, this is how you can supplement the lessons that I'm teaching today so that students had more time. And that's why I said time was an issue, because if you're doing one-on-one sessions all day, it's great, but that means your students are only with you for like a half hour to an hour, and then you're done with them the rest of the day. And while they all had sensory activities and they all had books, I did not want them not receiving a person all day, right? So then paras would just go on at opposite times as me so that they can have sessions throughout the day. All of them, though, looked like one-on-one sessions. My group sessions were different in that the class was together and we used it for socialization. So we would kind of have, so all 20 of us with the paras and me and students, we would be like, okay, check in real quick, 1 to 5, how you feeling, talk about your feelings. And then we would dive into, all right, tell me a show that you're watching right now. And we would play the trailer for the show for everybody to see. So I would screen share like that. Tell me a song that you love right now. And we would have like a dance party with each person picking one song. So we were doing things like that to kind of keep that social connection alive. And powers were, I see somebody wrote about powers, they were essential to the work. I wouldn't have been able to talk them. Anytime I speak about education, I want to shout out powers because they're amazing. I started as a para, so good times. But the one-on-one sessions were sometimes parents sat next to the student, and I would kind of present the work, and I always kind of use like a screen sharing type thing. And then so for some students, it was like, okay, you're going to listen to this and verbally give an answer. Some students were able to go on the screen and touch it or whatever. So it was a mix of how to instruct, but I made sure that everyone got one-on-one time with me every day. So it was funny, my days were so much longer than kind of the regular ed teachers, who typically, regular ed teachers like, oh, you got 15, it must be nice. You know, I got 120. However, doing distance learning, they were able to just kind of put some assignments online for students to just go and do on their own. And then they would have a class session with some learning 3 times a day, and it was over. And I was like, yeah, I've been teaching my students all day, and some of them in the evening time, so that we can do kind of one-on-one instruction. My powers were doing the exact same work. I feel like they should get raises like immediately, if not sooner. So that was kind of how it looked. It was like really one-on-one, really intensive. And that was the way I was able to keep focused. When I actually did try group learning at first, like all 15, me, one of the powers was in there. And like, I noticed how many students were just like checked out, you know, like taking a nap in there. And I was like, this isn't working. So then I did do some cool breakout session stuff where it's like a power went in a room with 3 students, a power went in a room with 3 students, power went in a room with 3 students, and I had 3, and we just like went, you know. But I was just, the one-on-one work worked so much better. They got so much more out of it. And I said to myself, I should be doing more one-on-one when we do get back in a classroom, because that was not something that was technically in the wheelhouse. I didn't have like an area in class where there was a student, there was either me or a power saying, okay, they're gonna go for a half hour and then we'll have the next student do that, because it worked amazingly well. So yeah.
Wow, kudos to you for thinking through all the details, right? And not just focusing on a class, because I do think sometimes we just tend to do that because of time, you know. It's just like, do with what you have, you know. But taking that extra time to think about, if I'm doing this, what are my students doing? Or is everybody taken care of throughout the day, even if they're not necessarily online with me? But do they have activities, and do they have, you know, the support they need? And also, I also appreciate the norms that you've set with like whole groups. So they all know, you know, when we all get together, it's time to play, you know, and socialize and talk and just talk about life, because we're all missing that too, you know, just the get-togethers and just being together and, you know, coffee talk, water cooler talk, whatever you call it. So that's really important. And then like they know where the instruction comes in. So if it's one-on-one, they know they're coming in to actually have a lesson. So I think that's really important. So yeah, kudos to you for thinking through all those ways to utilize time throughout a day. And it can be difficult without having paras. So kudos to those educators too that are having, you know, 24 kids online, no matter what grade level it is, it can be hard. But those were good ways to break it down if you guys have access to those resources, and involving the parents. You know, some are essential workers, but some parents are home and, you know, can split their time with, you know, aiding in their child's education.
Exactly.
And I know we're running low on time, but I don't want to lose sight of the IEP, you know, compliance. And I would love to just kind of hear a little bit about, you know, how is it working, or what are your challenges?
Yes, so real quick, I jumped into IEPs and I looked at the minutes and the goals for students, and I essentially jotted down to myself, okay, these are all the things I can do with my students. So in my one-on-one sessions, that I saw someone talk about it in the chat, I said, okay, this student has 4 IEP goals. I'll make sure I make that happen through my curriculum tool, which is very varied. And so I was able to do stuff with them, some math stuff with them, some social, emotional, and some transition stuff. But I looked at all the things I could do and listed it for each student, so that when I went into a session with a student, I would do that. All the things I couldn't do, I talked to the special ed facilitator on my campus. I don't know if everyone has that, or special ed director, some people call it. And I said, okay, this student actually needs a parent to do some feeding activity. What do we do there? This person needs, to some movement activities. Can I do it with the parent, and does that count as their meetings? So it was more like looking at the minutes. I think the best thing to do with that is look at the minutes, see what you can do, and the things you can't do are really important for you to ask someone and not just kind of blow off. So it was just like, okay, I got to talk to special ed director. And then they started putting together plans to make sure that happened.
Awesome. Awesome. Good. I think we could go on and on and on. You are full of so many good ideas and strategies, and I love that they are tried and true. To be able to say, hey, this actually worked for me, and here's how I did it. I mean, that's gold to a teacher or an educator for sure. We talked about obviously a lot in this tiny little time, and, hopefully the folks on the chat were able to grab what they needed. But just to recap, you laid out so nicely in the beginning, the 4 steps that you thought about. If you wouldn't mind maybe repeating those just to kind of end on here are the 4 things you need to worry about, and we can.
Yep. So going into the fall, so I know for me, my district, we are actually, we're on complete virtual until the first term is up. So
okay.
I'll break. So first thing to do was address equity and access. So knowing how your students learn, how you will be able to contact them, how you will be able to talk to them. And so I had to put that in my head, addressing equity and access. The second step was addressing communication. Am I communicating via phone, via text, via, whatever vehicle you use? Like I said, I use Mojo for the most of it, and it worked perfectly for me. I don't know how that'll work for you, but figuring out kind of this hub to contact all parents at all times. And if you have to have your parents involved, I had those involved. So the second was kind of addressing communication. Third was addressing IEP access and services, because you have no choice but do those things. So making sure that all happens. And then last was addressing instruction. So how am I going to instruct them? That was trial and error for me. I did try and do group teaching at first, and it just didn't work very well. And that's why I went to that. But that's for you to decide. So that was the way that it worked so well in my head to say, okay, equity, access, what kind of time can I give students? How will I contact students? Communication, addressing IEP access, making sure those services are gotten. I talked to the therapist, I talked to the parents, and then figuring out what was the best way to instruct. Yeah.
Very good. Perfect recap. I mean, those are the top level. If you can get those 4 things together, it sounds like it really could be fun again. Can I say again?
It was tiring. It was tiring doing one-on-one sessions, but I actually felt good about it. I talked to teachers who were a little frustrated. They were just like, man, I only had like 40% participation. And I was like, I had 100% participation. I talked to every student every day. I saw them. So even though they were shorter sessions, I knew my powers are solid, and I was able to talk to them. Now, powers cannot give new instruction, but I talked to them. They were saying we were doing all supplemental stuff for the first portion of this thing. And so it worked really well, where it's like, oh no, powers can give that. We're doing now supplemental learning. So it really worked out well to do, as much one-on-one work as I can. I know that's not possible for everyone, but if you have self-contained or small classes, you can do it.
Wonderful. Well, your students are extremely lucky to have you, as well as the colleagues that you get to work with every day. I mean, you're a gem, and it's really nice to know that, teachers are out there. They are certainly our heroes, for sure. If not,
no doubt
we're
about
always a hero and our mentor, but now more than ever, you're doing it and it's working, and we really appreciate it, for sure. I know our audience today, based on the chat that I was just kind of, on the side there, lots and lots of shout outs in terms of thank yous, and, lots of resources shared too. So I hope that everyone found this to be beneficial. I
know a lot of people, not a lot of people, but I know several of the people follow me on Twitter and stuff like that. If you need, like I said, I have a 4-page document of HighTech, LowTech, NoTech options for students with special needs that I would totally be happy to share with everybody if they just reach out to me.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? We can also find a way to include it in our recording. So the materials, because we're going to stop recording here in another minute, and then our
Okay.
recording will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, so you can archive this and share it with colleagues that maybe couldn't make today, or revisit some of the things we talked about. And then along with that, we can put all the links to the resources you talked about, as well as your full 4-page gold. Yeah, so we'll make sure we have access to all of that. The recording will be up. We give it about a week to get the recording up, because we make sure we polish it, make sure it's beautiful. So give it a week to show up on our YouTube site. And from there, we'll have to end it. And so Kareem, thank you for your time today. I really enjoyed our conversation. I got ideas. I mean, I'm leaving with a lot of ideas as well, which is always fun. And so we wish you the best of luck as you kick off this next school year. Your kids, again, are lucky to have you. So
I'm lucky to have them.
yeah.